Good morning. I'm Bonnie Gardner, co-chair of the Public Affairs Forum of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Austin at 4700 Grover Avenue. Our forum is free and open to the public and occurs almost every Sunday at noon. You are totally welcome to join us. If you'd like more information about our Public Affairs Forum, you can go to our church website at www.austinuu.org. Today we are very fortunate to have a wonderful and unusual presentation, and I'm going to let our church member Peggy Morton tell you a little bit more about it. Peggy?
Thank you. One of the first trips I planned after retiring from teaching in our public schools was to Southeast Asia. And while I traveled through Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam, I fully expected the highlight of my trip to be when I saw Angkor Wat in Siem Reap, Cambodia. And sure enough, the ancient ruins were as spectacular as the photos we've all seen in National Geographic. But the beauty was surpassed when I met two incredibly intelligent and caring women. These two women were my tour guides who took me to the Coal Care School and showed me a school that they'd been working in for many years, well, actually about 3 years since the foundation had started. And it was in the jungle. And they were truly making an incredible impact on the children of their community. And today, I'm deeply honored to introduce both of them to you. First, Cambodian Ponheary Lee, who is here visiting America for her first time. And then secondly, you will hear from Lori Carlson, who is a former Austinite, who was so moved by her first experience in Cambodia that she had the keen insight to join forces with Ponheary and her family to make an impact on education in a very poor community. So, welcome. Let's help me give them a big welcome.
So, first of all, I would like to thank your church who gave me the chance to stay here to share my life through the decades of the war and genocide in my country, Cambodia. My name is Ponheary Lee. I'm from Siem Reap, Cambodia. I am currently a tour guide and the owner of a tour company specializing in Angkor Complex, and also along with my family, the owner of a guest house called Seven Candles Guest House. In addition to this, my family is involved to help to build our country by helping the poor children to go to school. Why we are doing this? Because we know that the education is the answer to the problem of poverty. I was born in an educated family. My father, the picture on the left, he was a teacher in the high school in Siem Reap. I went to school nearby my house, about 3 kilometers from the town. The Vietnamese War came into the country in 1970. This is the influence of the war between American and the Northern Vietnam. The Northern Vietnam made the Ho Chi Minh Trail across our country to fight against the Southern Vietnam. Then our king, Norodom Sihanouk, he went abroad to negotiate with the communist bloc and capitalist bloc to stop the war in our country. By then, American CIA helped the General Lon Nol to make a coup d'etat overthrow the king. Vietnamese from the north worked with the Khmer Rouge political party to convince the people to fight against the coup d'etat government by using the name of the king, Norodom Sihanouk. The people participated because they loved the king. The bombing started the end of 1960s. By 1970, it arrived into my province, Siem Reap. The U.S. bomber planes dropped the bomb everywhere in the whole country. I saw by myself with my eyes from my house when the bomb in the Angkor complex. When the war started, we didn't have school for a while. Khmeros and Viet Cong, Vietnamese from North, they said that whoever could kill a teacher could get paid 3,000 real, which was about 1,000 US dollar at that time. Or a teacher's wife, 1,500 real, or a teacher child, 500 real. We live in fear all the time. We had to escape from our place to live with our uncle in another province in the countryside where no one knew us. But after then, several months, our father, he worried about we could be stuck in the countryside because the war became worse and worse. So he brought us back to Siem Reap, but however we couldn't go back to our house, which was about 2 miles from Siem Reap, from the town. We had to hire an apartment to live. Life became more and more expensive. Salary teacher couldn't support the family anymore. So my father had to open a bookshop for my mom to work, even though my mom went to school only 1 year in her life. Living in a town, we could go to school, but there was a mortar shell fell in the town, the grenade exploded in town all the time. So in total, I went to school 7.5 years before the genocide started. April 17, 1975, Khmerus got the power. This is Pol Pot. His real name is Salotso. Pol Pot is the shortcut from 2 words, POL from the word politic and POT from the word potential. The first day of his power, his soldiers killed the US-backed Lodno soldiers. They chased our family from the town, the same as the other families in all towns in the whole country. We couldn't take any car, any vehicle with us. We just walked, carrying the heavy thing. 15 days. When we got to the spot where we had to live, we didn't have anything in our hands. We started with nothing. We had to work very hard. We didn't have anything to eat. We ate whatever we found, as insect, cricket, grasshopper, worm, everything. We ate grass, we ate the leaf, we imitated the animals. Some people, they confused eat the poisonous mushroom and died. We were all separated. But one day, I remember 1977, they collected all the family, the new family, the family they chased out from the town, live in that region, into one place as the prison camp, include my family. I arrived there one day after the other people. When I got there, Mom told me that I was too late to see my father for his last life. He was killed the night before because he was a teacher. Our youngest sister, 5 months old, died in my arms. In the prison camp, I saw many people die every day. In the prison camp, only 6 weeks. At the beginning, there were 350 women and children. The inner 6 weeks, only 102 survived. During 3 years, 8 months, and 20 days of genocide, many people in my family who live far from us, as my uncle, my aunties, my cousins, my grandfather, died. Some of them because of starving, some of them died because of being killed. 1979, January 7, Vietnamese troops came into the country again to chase Pol Pot out from the power. And Vietnamese occupied our country for 10 years. We came back to the town. This is the picture of my family, my sister Marina, my mom, my sister Sray, my brother, and the big one, he's the owner of the elephant, you see. The picture in front of our old house where we have the guest house now. My mom worked very hard to raise all of us. Two sisters and one brother in 1980 could go to school. But one sister, the picture nearby me, she got a very bad fever and she lost her hearing, and she cannot hear now, she became deaf. At that time, it was very hard for us. We didn't have the money or any idea to help her, but she's very strong. She could recover, and she now studies English, French, and Thai languages by herself. Since all the teachers were killed, it was very easy for me for going to the teacher training school to be trained as a teacher only in 3 months. I became elementary teacher with a very small knowledge, even though I had only 1.5 years of education. Same time, I studied foreign language as English and French, which was against the law at that time. And during that time, my mom opened a bookshop again, and she forced us to read all books in her shop and told her what the book talked about so that she know which one she could sell to anybody who wanted to buy her book. In 1987, I went to Phnom Penh to pass the exam to study Russian language. Because I wanted to be a teacher in the secondary school, the same as my father. I went to Russia with the scholarship of the Russian government. Vietnamese troops withdrew from our country in 1990. A United Nations peacekeeper came into the country to help us to make the peace by helping the election. Even though we got the election government in 1993, but the war still continued because Khmer soldiers, they stayed still in the forest to fight against the government because Khmer's political party, they didn't think that they could win in the election. So they stayed still fighting. And until 1998, when Pol Pot died. Go back a little bit, 1994, French Center opened in Siem Reap. So I went there to study French, but the director offered me a job to teach French, and I got the scholarship from French government to go to France. So at the same time, I forgot to tell, when I came back from Russia, I became an English teacher because at that time Russian influence was over. In 1994, I worked as a French teacher in French Center and English teacher in a public school. Since we found tourists come to our town more and more and need the place to stay, our family decided to build a guest house called 7 Candles Guest House. As we all know foreign language, it's easy for us to work with the tourists. So 2000, my sisters and brother and me, we became tour guide. Since we are the tour guide, we saw many children coming more and more in the temples to beg the money to sell the souvenirs, because the tourists like giving the money to the children, like buying souvenirs from children. We all thought that if we could have those tourists give the money to the children or support the children in the school to go to school, it's better. So 2001, I started with one girl, then 40 children, then more than 100 children. By the end of 2005, I supported more than 200 children. When the 1st January 2006, I guided Lori Carlson. She went there as a tourist. During our visit in the school, she asked me if I could have a lot of money, what would I do? So I told her that if I could have a lot of money, I would help all poor children in my country. So 1 month after her visit, Ponheary Relief Foundation was founded in Austin, Texas. Our foundation has grown every year, but our family still working, join all activities of the foundation in the school. In the picture, we made the bundle of supplies and uniforms. Now we grow to be supporting 2,500 students in 4 different schools, 3 schools in Siem Reap and 1 school in Ponheary province called Koke School, where Peggy go. My deaf sister Sutira, she teaches computer in the computer class in 7 Candle guest house for the children in town. 2010, I became CNN hero because of our family work and also because many people support our program. I would like to thank all people who support us in order we could help the children or the poor people, the people suffer in the war, in the genocide. I was invited to give a speech at UNESCO conference in Jakarta and at Microsoft seminar in Singapore. So in my family, our life in the family went from the good life to losing our father through the genocide, through the war, until we become very poor and nothing in our hands, no idea to start again. Especially difficult with our father. So the answer to our family is education. We use the knowledge seed that our father grew in us long time ago to start our life again. Our guest house came because we saved the money from being tour guide. We could become a tour guide because we study foreign languages. We could study foreign languages because we were the teacher. We could become the teacher because we had enough knowledge to do so when all the teachers were gone. Without education, we would be living in the fear of starving, selling the vegetable along the street. So we want to spread this news to all the people who are still struggling. The Ponheary Relief Foundation exists because in our country, there are still a lot of poor people. The people who never thought that they had the opportunity. So we show them that school is the answer to them also, and lead them to get there, to grow the same seed as our father grew in us many years ago. Thank you.
When I met Ponheary Lee in 2006, early 2006, I was deeply inspired by the humanness of her family being survivors of this genocide of 30 years of wartime. And the very second that that family had even marginally recovered from that experience, they went right back into the community of the perpetrators who killed her father and ruined their family's life, and indeed the whole country, to ask questions about what's the problem, how can we help. And for me, living in a post 9/11 world, it was refreshing and extremely inspiring to meet people who, instead of this cycle of retribution, were seeking solutions and trying to help. A little more, okay. All right, so hopefully you understand now what the why of our project is about. It is a labor of love for Ponheary and her family. I'm going to tell you a little story today about one school, Koke School, which is where Peggy was brought when she came to Cambodia. And hopefully you'll start to understand a little bit of the how and the who. So Koke Village is located in the northern part of the country that's pretty deep in the jungle, and it was a base village that was occupied by the Khmer Rouge during the genocidal times that Ponheary described. The villagers at Koke were loyal to the deadly regime, and in 1979, when the Vietnamese came into the country, they were scattered up into the forest and across the border into refugee camps. Insurgency fighting continued in that area until 1998, with the death of Pol Pot, brought finally peace after 2 decades of guerrilla warfare in that part of the country. The residents, mostly women and children, began returning to their villages after decades of hiding in the forest. When they got to school, to their village, there was no school, no market, no pagoda, no money, no medicine. Every single thing was completely destroyed. There was one woman, her name is Seungri, pictured here, and she was from another area, and she was one of the few literate people in the village. Occasionally, she would teach some children under a tree, but they had no formal schooling until a big international NGO showed up and cleared the landmines out of a piece of land near the village and built a 3-room schoolhouse. And then they left. They somehow expected that this village would be able to teach in there and support the school. What they didn't really consider was the context. And in this village of Khmer Rouge outliers who were struggling to find enough to eat, none of these people had ever gone to school. They had forgotten about school completely. And I'm not sure how they could have ever been expected to start supporting a school on their own. These perpetrators of this extraordinary violence have deep post-traumatic stress disorder. They self-medicate with alcohol, and decades of violence has been normalized for them. The abuse of each other, and especially of their children, was and is rampant. They are completely disconnected from all forms of traditional or modern support systems, such as religion, education, or medicine. The Foundation's holistic approach to education was formed in those early days at Koke, when we came to understand that putting uniforms on children and equipping them with school supplies and sending them off to the big white building really wasn't going to address all of the underlying issues that existed in their community and at the school. When we first arrived there, there was a group of about 40 children who would gather in the building with this one literate woman occasionally and recite the alphabet together. They had no books, no pencils, no chalk, no paper, nothing with which to teach or learn. They were taught by rote. They were not encouraged to school, neither were they kept from school by parents who frankly didn't oversee the children much at all. What was good about that is that we were able to negotiate directly with the children about the benefits of going to school. In our first visits, we went to the school. We had some donated clothing that we distributed to the children. We started fixing some food. and just tried to get a general assessment of the wellness of the children there. They started coming in greater and greater numbers, mainly because we had food there, and they were curious to see what was going on at school that day. Our biggest problem was the health of the children. They were all quite sick, not just a little bit sick. All of them had raging fevers from either malaria, dengue fever, tuberculosis was rampant in the community. They were quite weak, and a lot of them couldn't even lock eyes. To me, at that time, that seemed way outside of our competency, all these issues. At the other schools where we were working, we didn't have this level of dysfunction and unwellness in the children. I told Ponheary that we were about to fall in a big hole. Her response to me was, we fell in the hole when we came looking for these children. We can climb out whenever we want, but are we taking these kids with us or not? In that moment, I realized I was really standing face to face with her vision of this idea of ridding the country of this Khmer Rouge dogma by shifting the children. For me, in that moment, there really was no turning back from the school, from the children at the school. But we had to really wrap our heads around how we could start approaching the problems. I spent about 10 days on the phone trying to get help from larger organizations that I felt like did have competency around these things. And during the 10 days I spent on the phone, 2 children perished. It started to become very real about how urgent the situation up there was. Doctors Without Borders, World Food Program, some of these big organizations told me it's too inaccessible, it's too corrupt, and without the support of the community, it's a road to nowhere. We took matters into our own hands. We found a local doctor who was up in the sort of the county seat of that area. He knew the village well, and he explained to us pretty patiently that if we weren't going to address the clean water and the food insecurity issues, those children, no amount of medicine in the world was going to solve their problem. At that time, our organization was very young and very small, and maybe you can see here on the left, that bar on the left is what we were mostly spending money on, which is school supplies and uniforms. That little puddle over there on the right was our wellness program. So Coquet School was about to turn our model inside out. The biggest problem with the children was that they were undernourished. And when you have severe malnutrition, the smallest illness becomes life-threatening. So we built the kitchen. It's the first thing. Not really a kitchen, more of a earthen stove with a metal roof. All of the money that we had, we wanted to pour into the food. And so we just started cooking breakfast every day. Dr. Kim came with drugs to treat the children that were quite unwell and turned the classrooms into a triage area where he administered medication to children for first 6 or 7 days of school. We didn't do much in the first few months except feed kids, and that was a good thing because we didn't have any teachers yet. Dr. Kim started working with the children on hygiene issues and other things that he had been trying to work with the villagers on and never could make any headway. And the children were the ones who could actually accept that information, and so once they were all in a place together, he was able to start that work. This is a typical drinking source, and the parents of this village had somehow survived in the forest for upwards of 15 years in hiding, drinking water from the ground like this, and they were still alive. So their thinking was, it's okay to drink this water, we don't need to boil water, we don't need to do anything, this is drinking water. So this is the first time where we had a real clash with what we were trying to teach, just jutting up against what the parents were teaching at home. We would have liked to put a clean water solution in the village, but we knew that they weren't going to accept it. So we built it at school and encouraged the children every day to drink the clean water. And eventually they did because they decided it was delicious. We saw them start to take the water home, to drink it at home. And that, combined with a little bit of food and some deworming, brought them to a level of health that they had never experienced before. We started seeing children taking the knowledge that they were learning at school home, and started to see and understand the way that an organic spiraling of information can work from the inside out. We started to see some mothers showing up at school, bringing their small infants to bathe them in clean water with soap. We started to see mothers walking their smallest children to school. We started to see mothers staying at school all day, standing outside the window, watching in amazement as their children began to read. By the end of the first year, things were really looking up. The kids were no longer sleeping at their desks during recess. They were outside playing. They were putting on weight. They were smiling. They were locking eyes. They were taking home the things that they were learning at school and teaching their parents how to read. We did eventually get some teachers from the Ministry of Education. The teachers in the remote areas have a 9th grade education and very little teacher training. They are paid $150 a year in a lump sum by the government. So we began a teacher subsidy program to pay them enough salary so that they could live. And really our whole teacher support program got redefined at that school during that time. In the second year, we hired some men from the village, and they built this ramshackle building so that we could start grades 4, 5, and 6. The children of that village were about to be the first people to ever go past the 3rd grade, ever. And the first children to ever work out a word problem, hold a crayon, have access to medical care, have enough food in their belly that they could think about something else. So school went on, and the kids were learning, and they became actually the #1 school in that province, in the whole province, academically. And that probably was mostly due to the fact that they actually had teachers every day. They had books and paper and pens, and they were healthy enough to learn. We made a huge deal out of every small accomplishment of the students at school. And eventually we started to see the parents showing real signs of pride in the achievement of their children at school. Things started really started to shift in the way the parents viewed their children's participation at school. The scholastic achievements of the school got the attention of the Ministry of Education, who advocated on our behalf with the World Food Program, who 3 years later finally started bringing us food. When the monthly rice trucks started showing up at the school, we were able to take all the rice money and convert it into protein and vegetables, and our medicine costs immediately started going down. Noticing a trend in that decrease in medicine, we upped the protein intake again at the school, and medicine fell for the first time from $200 a month to $10, and has stayed there since we've been able to keep food going. Blue is food, red is medicine. In 2009, we had our first 4 graduates from grade 6, and we were astonished to discover that they wanted to continue to secondary school. There is no secondary school anywhere near there. And in order to get there, they would have to travel too far. So we made a deal with the parents to house them with families in that nearby city where there was a school, and we sent them to the town of Srayong to go to secondary school. That model did not work. The children were made to work, made to sleep outside, weren't given enough to eat, and treated very badly. Only 1 student made it through that year. The rest of them dropped out and went home. So that model wasn't going to work. And for the first time, we actually brought the parents to the school and sat them down and said, your children want to go to secondary school, and apparently you're okay with that. What do you want us to do? They decided that we should build a house in that town and take their children to a dormitory and let them go to grades 7, 8, and 9. They had a stipulation that their house mother had to come from their village. And guess who? This woman who, when they were little bitty kids,
tried to teach them outside with a stick, is now their house mother, confidant, soul mentor. We enrolled the children into the dormitory, and their parents brought them and delivered them to the house. This was their house when we first got it. Pretty ramshackle, full of garbage, and we basically said, okay, here's your house. We think you should live in the most beautiful house in this town, so whatever you think you need to do it. And they did this pretty quickly, and this. And they put gardens in, and of course there's, cats. The following year we had our first boys graduate from grade 6. We never in a million years imagined that the parents would let their manpower off the farm for 3 years to come to secondary school. But they were coming. They were intent on coming. And it was time for us to think about another house. Traditional funding for another house for boys was impossible in this era of the girl effect. Everybody wants to fund girls' projects, and we get it, we do too. You get a lot of bang for the buck on girls' education in the developing world. But how was Ponheary's goal of shift going to occur if we educated all these girls and then sent them back to the village to marry disenfranchised men? We turned away from traditional funding sources back into private donors and found someone who understood our mission and agreed to build the house. So Srayong became a co-ed dorm. It's growing every year. We're in the 3rd year now. We have our first 9th graders that will graduate this year. There are 32 children at the dorm right now attending middle school. There is no possibility for them to go past that. There's no school anywhere up there for them to finish grade 12. What will happen when the children from Kokay Village have some education? We have no idea. We only know what it looks like when they don't. They go to public school half a day, 6 days a week, and in a classroom that we have on the property, they have private classes in the afternoon in English, science, and math. Volunteers come from abroad to expose students at the dorm to things they'll never learn in public school. We have a solar installation at the property now, and recently Ponheary's deaf sister Sray has come there to install a computer lab. Meanwhile, back in Siem Reap, we have a group of students that are involved in a media project called Tell Your Own Story. And they're learning to use iPads to make videos, to talk about their struggle, to have a look at the world that they live in. And they have started putting together some very basic documentaries about that, telling their story. We sent them to Srayong and to Kokay School to document the Khmer New Year celebrations up there. And these media students, who themselves live in the countryside and are poor, were really struck by the level of poverty at Kokay, and they imagined it would be quite difficult to live there. One student, Ria Say, was very interested in understanding the struggle of the girls at the dormitory and went back to interview them. They screened their film at the Angkor Wat International Film Festival just before Ponheary and I came to America. And I've got a little 10-minute clip of that I will show you now so that you can see and hear from these children yourselves.
My name is Riasai. I am 17 years old and I live near Siem Reap, Cambodia. For the past 4 years, I have studied computers. This year, I have been studying media and how to tell my own story to the world. Last year, my class made a video about the Khmer New Year celebrations in Kokay, a village 3 hours north of Siem Reap. But what I noticed most was the village. It is very far in the forest and the road is very bad. I thought it must be very hard to live there. The school in the village stops at grade 6. If the students want to study in grade 7, they must travel 10 kilometers every day through the forest to the school in Srayong. Most students my age have dropped out of school. I wanted to go back to make a video of the students so that they could tell their story to the world.
Tôi กิดនៅក្នុងគ្រួសារមួយដែលមានបងប្អូនចំនួន8នាក់ឋានភាពគ្រួសារខ្ញុំមធ្យមខ្ញុំជាកូនទី2មានការលំបាកនៅក្នុងគ្រួសារខ្លះដែរទៅរួមបានចូលរៀនមុននឹងបានចូលរៀននឹងឯងអាយុច្រើនដែរពេលបានចូលរៀនទៅខ្វះដូចថាខ្វះសាលារៀនខ្វះគ្រូបង្រៀនរៀននៅតាមក្រុមដើមក្រងដើមស្វាយគ្មានសភៅរៀនគ្មានខោអាវស្លៀកពាក់ទៅរៀនប៉ុន្តែនៅតែខំរៀនរហូតបានមានគេជួយធ្វើសាលារៀនបានចូលរៀនទីខ្ញុំប៉ិនខ្ទមនៅលើកមុនតស៊ូនៅក្នុងព្រៃនៅព្រៃផ្ទះពី3 4កាលនោះមានផ្ទះណាមានផ្ទះបងប្អូនខ្ញុំ3 4 5ផ្ទះរស់ស៊ីនៅនោះជីកដលងផងជីកក្ដួចផងហូបដើម្បីបាតនាទៅពុកម៉ែហូបតិចតិចឲ្យកូនហូបច្រើនខ្ញុំចូលរៀនតាំងពីអាយុ10ឆ្នាំរហូតដល់អាយុ8 10ឆ្នាំដល់ពេលឥឡូវនេះ10ឆ្នាំហ្នឹងមកឲ្យរៀនថ្នាក់ទីម៉ាន10ឆ្នាំខ្ញុំរៀនថ្នាក់ទី1ហើយបន្ទាប់មកខ្ញុំឈប់រៀនហើយចូលរៀនវិញផ្លោះថ្នាក់ទៅបន្ទាប់មកខ្ញុំចូលរៀនរហូតបានត្រឹមថ្នាក់ទី6បានខ្ញុំរៀនជាប់ថ្នាក់ជាប់គ្នាមូលហេតុអីបានមកឯងឈប់ចាមូលហេតុមកពីគ្រូសាខ្ញុំក្រពេកហើយថាបបាក់ក្នុងគ្រួសារហើយណាមួយមកឲ្យខ្ញុំឈឺទៅឆ្ងាយសាលាផង
សង្គមនៅតូចដែលមកធំចំនួនពលពតរៀនបានថ្នាក់ទី4ក៏ចាប់ចូលមកសង្គមនេះអត់បានរៀនទេអត់ធ្វើអីផងធ្វើស្រែពេលខ្ញុំយកប្តីមកបានមកនៅកោះគេទៅបានធ្វើគ្រូវាអត់ចេះទៅទេសោះកាលមុនអត់មានគ្រូទេនៅកោះគេឯណាហើយបើរំជែកគេមានបើកោះគេអត់មានគេអត់ស្ម័គ្រចិត្តចូលទៅរៀនទេមិនដឹងយ៉ាងម៉េចរៀនតាមក្រុមលុបឈើភ្លៀងផងអីផងហើយខ្ញុំគ្មានខោអាវទេខោមួយស្មើនេះដើរទៅរៀននឹងគេមានណាចង់ទៅរៀនទេថាងពិបាកទៅរៀនធ្វើអីទៅធ្វើស្រែវិញវាបានលុយជាងបានស៊ីបានឆ្អែតពីដើមមកក៏មិនទៅអញការចំណេះអញក៏មិនទៅរៀនណាបានចេះបានឆ្អែតទេបើមិនធ្វើស្រែវាមិនដែលបានស៊ីទេថាដល់ពេលនេះទៅក៏អ្នកគ្រូគាត់មកតែងហៅសិស្សមកក៏អប់រំយូរទៅក៏ម៉ែឲ្យសិស្សក៏ចេះទៅយល់ដឹងទៅក៏បានគូនៅមករៀនគ្រប់គ្នាពីមុនអ្នកខ្លះថាគេមិនចោលគោមករៀនវាអត់មានខោអាវសម្លៀកបំពាក់អីផងតែស្លៀករយាយក៏ឈឺខ្វះគ្រប់សពរៀនថ្នាក់ទី1ផងលំបាកមែនទែនរៀនថ្នាក់ទី1អំពី3 4ឆ្នាំត្រឹមគេធ្វើសាលាបានចូលរៀនទៅនៅទៅរៀនចឹងឯងតស៊ូទៅរៀនគ្មានខោអាវស្លៀកក៏ស្លៀកសំពត់កំប្រងនឹងឯងទៅរៀន
តស៊ូរហូតមកដល់សប្តាហ៍ថ្ងៃនេះខំទៅរៀន
ត្រូវម៉ែឪខ្ញុំស្លាប់ហើយខ្ញុំនៅស្រុកខ្ញុំឈប់រៀននៅស្រុកខ្ញុំរៀននៅកោះគេពេលដែលភាសាខ្ញុំវាក្រដែលនៅកន្លែងមួយម្ដាយមីងខ្ញុំក្រទៀតហើយតើខ្ញុំក៏ឈប់រៀននៅហ្នឹងខ្ញុំទៅនៅជាមួយយាយតាខ្ញុំមកផ្នែកទៀតនៅខាងស្នាប់ឯក
2005 2006 2007អ្នកគ្រូPonhearyតោយកដូចជាខោអាវសម្លៀកបំពាក់ទៅចែកអោយ
ខ្ញុំក៏ចង់ចូលរៀនវិញប៉ុន្តែដូចថាខ្ញុំខ្វះថវិកាខ្វះការហូបចុកអីចឹងក៏លោកគ្រូភេទម៉ាប់គាត់ពិភាក្សាជាមួយអ្នកគ្រូPonhearyពិភាក្សាថាបើសិនជាខ្ញុំខ្វះកាថវិកាអញ្ចឹងតែខ្ញុំរៀនយ៉ាងណាកើតដល់ពេលហ្នឹងទៅគាត់ពិភាក្សាថាបើគាត់ជួយឧបត្ថម្ភមួយផ្នែកទៀតលើខ្ញុំពីរអ្នកបងប្អូនតែអាចរៀនបានអត់ខ្ញុំគាត់ស្នើពោរៀនតាមនឹងទៀតឲ្យគាត់ជួយđểបានស្នាក់នៅសាលាបានដល់ឡៃនៅសាលាកោះគេហ្នឹងរហូតដល់ឡើងមកថ្នាក់នឹងទី7ទី8ហ្នឹងទៀត
លើកវឹកអ្នកគ្រូគាត់បានមកក៏គាត់ទិញជាសម្ភារៈដូចជាខោអាវដូចជាអីមកអោយសិស្សមកក៏មកក៏ចេះទីប្រជុំប្រាប់មេភូមិមេឃុំអោយជួយជំរុញម៉ែឲ្យកូនចូលរៀន
បើសិនជាកូនស្រីមករៀននៅឆ្ងាយទៅដូចចាស់គាត់ថាដល់ពេលស្រីមករៀនទៅមិនបានទេដល់ពេលរៀនចេះទៅសរសេរទីស្មុតស្នេហាហើយគាត់អោយទេកូនសិស្សអាណាកូនប្រុសអោយមករៀនព្រោះគាត់ថាគាត់អត់មានចំណេះដឹងគាត់អត់បានគិតដល់អនាគតកូនដល់ពេលរៀនបានថ្នាក់ទី1ទី2ទៅគាត់តែងទៅវិញ គេថារៀនធ្វើអីមកធ្វើស្រែវិញទៅ មានតែខ្ញុំលើកទី1ហ្នឹងឯងជាសិស្សច្បងដែលបានរៀនចប់ថ្នាក់ទី9ផុតបំណងគេបោះបង់ការសិក្សាចូលតាមពីនៅបឋមសាលាកោះគេហើយគេបានមកអនុជាល័យដែរប៉ុន្តែគេបានត្រឹមថ្នាក់ទី7ទី8ទៅគេឈប់អស់ពេលខ្ញុំនៅទីនេះទៅធ្វើឲ្យខ្ញុំងាយស្រួលក្នុងការសិក្សាហើយនៅទៅរៀនបានទៀងទាត់គ្រប់ពេលវេលា
ចុងក្រោយខ្ញុំចង់ផ្ដាំទៅបងប្អូនសិស្សានុសិស្សទាំងអស់ដូចថាបើយើងទោះបីជាអាយុច្រើនប៉ុន្តែយើងក៏មានកំណត់ថាចង់បង់ការសិក្សាចោលព្រោះអីពេលវេលានៃការរៀនសូត្រយើងមិនរើសពីអាយុឬក៏ក្មេងចាស់ទេយើងអាចរៀនបានគ្រប់ចំណាស់ហើយខ្ញុំក៏សង្ឃឹមថាសិស្សានុសិស្សទាំងអស់មិនមានចិត្តបោះបង់ការសិក្សាចោលទេខ្ញុំទៅអប់រំ ពួកស្រីដែលនៅក្មេងៗដែលគេឪពុកម្ដាយគេថាអូនទាញទៅមិនអោយរៀនទៅខ្ញុំនឹងទៅអប់រំគេអោយគេមកចូលរៀនហើយខ្ញុំនឹងទៅប្រាប់ឪពុកម្ដាយគេថាកូនស្រីក៏អាចមករៀនបានដែរមិនថាជាស្រីមិនថាជាប្រុសទេព្រោះឥឡូវនេះគេលើកតម្លៃស្រីច្រើនជាងប្រុសហើយ ខ្ញុំនឹងទៅបង្រៀនពីការដែលយើងខំតស៊ូរៀនមកមានចំណេះដឹងយើងនឹងទៅអភិវឌ្ឍភូមិយើងបណ្ដុះបណ្ដាលបងប្អូនសិស្សានុសិស្សក្មួយនៅក្នុងភូមិកោះគេនឹងឯងឲ្យបានខិតខំរៀនសូត្រដើម្បីជាទំពាំងស្នងឫស្សីដល់បុព្វបុរសខ្មែរយើងនឹងខិតខំប្រឹងប្រែងរៀនសូត្ររហូតដល់បានការងារធ្វើនៅអនាគត ដល់ប្រទេសជាតិរបស់យើង
Okay. So that's a very big story in a very small nutshell. And if you have any questions or comments about the project, we'd be happy to, Ponheary or I, either one, would be happy to answer any questions.
Well, I'm really happy to see that after the genocide that there's recovery and progress being made.
You know, obviously we are too. I think especially Ponheary in ways that we can't imagine. Something that I find really interesting and also inspiring is that in Cambodia, because of the genocide, 50% of the population is under the age of 20. So focusing on the youth of that country and their ability and drive to be able to lift themselves and that country up are pretty huge. And it's important, obviously, to get them educated and mobilized because they have a huge task at hand, and I think that they're very capable of doing it. Yeah.
Thank you for a very informative program this morning.
Thank you.
I noticed that this is public education in this, and I noticed there was a lack of any kind of religious involvement. Would you please comment on that?
There are pagodas. Cambodia is primarily a Buddhist country, and religious education happens in the pagoda. These are public schools run by the government, and there really isn't any religious education that goes on in the school. That's correct.
We have a question back here. Would you stand up and say your name?
I know each other. Yeah, last night I was, you mentioned, or someone mentioned, I think it was you, about the film showing, that was a portion of the film, but there was actually the full film showed at the festival, but then it was also mentioned that the full film is not available to be seen right now. So the full film was shown at the festival?
The full film we had actually this is all very fresh. That film filmed at the festival right before we came to the U.S. And that sort of brought a lot of things to the surface for these students because the full film is actually pretty intense, and these kids are talking about some things that are pretty raw and for us difficult to view and for them difficult to talk about. And they don't really understand about their digital footprint and all of these other issues, and their media director, their media teacher, is trying to talk with both the filmmakers and the students who were interviewed to make it clear, what does it mean when you put a video on YouTube? What does it mean when you put it on a disc and distribute it? I mean, they live in the forest, you know. Right. So we're really trying to make sure that everybody gets all that and potentially edit some of that stuff out of there before we release it. But we will.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we had another question here. How much time do we have? 5 minutes. Okay, would you stand and say your name, please?
Hi, my name's Carol. When I came in a little late, and when I came in, you were just at the part where the woman, I believe it was going to return to the village and find out why what happened. And you made a comment, on that being a great attitude. What I'm wondering is, do you know why what happened? Because I never understood why all those murders, genocide went on for 20 years. Do you perhaps understand that?
Well, it's pretty complicated, but Pol Pot, who was the leader of the Khmer Rouge regime, was a Mao extremist. And so he wanted to return Cambodia to its Angkorian glory, which was 1,000 years ago, and cut the country off from the outside world and return everybody to the rice fields. They rejected medicine, all foreign influence, good or bad. And that brought the people down. So he wiped out doctors, teachers, bankers, anybody with an education was wiped out to bring the population back down to basically to the uneducated masses. So 1/3 of the population disappeared in 3 years.
And we have time probably for one last question. Fred Higgins?
Yes, my name is Fred Higgins, and I'm just curious if you could just quickly say what one or two of your biggest challenges are right now in continuing the work that you're doing.
I think that we're getting a pretty good handle on how to get kids in school and how to make school meaningful for them, and kind of gotten over a lot of those challenges. The challenges now are, what do they do next? What do they do after that? There's not vocational training. There's just a lot of pieces missing. There's no enterprise there. 300,000 people are going into the workforce every year, and there are 20,000 jobs. So a lot of enterprise needs to be created. Where are they getting the skill sets to do that? There are universities, but they're much like here, actually. Not everybody needs to go to university. Some people need to be a plumber, and where do they learn how to do that? So that piece seems to be missing, and we're exploring options on how to start addressing some of that.
And it looks like if you want to donate, you can go online and look up the Ponheary Lee Foundation. This has been such a powerful presentation, I think, for all of us, and we admire your work. I think it's an inspiration. And let's thank Ponheary Lee again and Laurie Carlson, certainly not only for this program, but for this wonderful work. Thank you again. And
thank you very much. Stand up. Thank you for having us. Our pleasure.